What happened to the sun?
It's the last day of March 2011.
Yeah,
it's not April Fool's Day yet.
Could be.
But we're here to try to pull the wool over your eyes if we can.
No.
On the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base by the old Stone Barracks, which I hope is on the lips of every person watching this and in the ears of every person listening to this. We're going to talk about the old Stone Barracks with my dear friend Keith Herculow, president of the Battle of Plattsburgh Association. We're recording this before April. By the time you watch it, who knows what might have developed here at the old Stone Barracks.
True.
It happens to be one of my favorite buildings. I learned a lot about the history from you and from other people. It became a focal point for some of our Haunted Haunts bus tours. Absolutely. On behalf of the Battle of Plattsburgh Association around Halloween time in the past, and now is the subject of a lot of comment and controversy. So we're here today to try to exhaust each other, but we've never done it before. How are you, Mr. Keith?
I am well, thank you very much, Gordy. And more than anything today, I think we'd like to tell your viewers exactly what's going on. It's important that everyone understands what's going on here, and the entire history of what we're trying to do here is to bring this to the light of day. Let everybody know what's going on, not only above ground, which is behind us, but below the ground. And there are lots of things here that need to be, we need to inform the public about. Significant archaeological resources underneath the ground here, and possibly people weren't aware of that in the past. And we'd like to talk about the building itself and what the Battle of Plattsburgh and the friends of the old Stone Barracks. They will be from this point on a standing subcommittee of the Battle of Plattsburgh Association. What we're trying to accomplish in bringing all of the story to light, so that this community looks at this building as what it should be, and that is a national treasure. We have an opportunity to preserve this barracks and use it in a sensitive, adaptive reuse, and we have a social responsibility to do that. There's no way around it.
You and I have talked about the old Stone Barracks and about a lot of other things on this property for many, many years. And as I was driving over here today, I recalled the first time I ever saw this old Stone Barracks in the early 1950s, when I drove back and forth from my home in Moira to help build the new base, working on construction. I fell in love with this building then. It looks a little different now all these years later. It was much, much better shape back then.
Absolutely.
When did you first become aware of this building?
Well, of course, I was born here in Plattsburgh, raised in Philadelphia, but also raised in Plattsburgh. We came back here every summer. As soon as school was over, we left the city and came here, and we moved into the city. My mother's friend had a place on the lake. They went to the lake. We moved into their house. So I was here 3 months out of the year. And luckily for me, it was always in the summer. Yeah. So bicycle gets you a long way in Plattsburgh. And, I was all over the place down here. And this barracks just has a dear place in my heart because, first of all, you can't escape the sheer imposing structure that it is. And it's here, and you can see it from Route 9. And Route 9 is, by the way, the New York Scenic Byway. It's a federal highway. And we're going to talk about the federal highway program and what the barracks could mean to that federal highway program. The Lakes to Locks program, as it's known, the corridor between Manhattan and Montreal. And one of our hopes is that we can generate inside the lobby of this building, or what would be the lobby, a regional byways information center that would bring the public to the area, let them know what's going on in the local area, guide them to our restaurants and our motels and our museums. And it's just a wonderful thing if we can get away with that.
You and I have discussed our hopes and dreams, our wildest aspirations. I have attended I don't know how many significant events on the steps and the porticos here at the old Stone Barracks. And I've heard some pretty grandiose schemes that were expounded upon and displayed over the years.
You're right.
And I've thought a lot about this building, not nearly as much as you have. but I've ridden the wave of your enthusiasm more than once.
More than once.
I
Yes,
didn't
you
know
have.
when we were going to fall off, but it's about time that we brought this whole question together, and that's why I'm so thrilled to be here as we're approaching hopefully a new season with a big snowstorm in the works.
Yes,
I just
tomorrow.
saw the weather before I came here, and they got tornadoes going across Florida. The Yankees are hoping to get the first game of the season against Detroit in New York City, and here
Welcome
in the
to the North
Country.
Country.
Welcome to the great North Country.
Absolutely.
But anyway, sometimes looks can be deceiving.
They are.
I haven't been inside this building in many years. I was very good friends with the first base commander, Colonel Robert Mall, who wanted to start a little museum inside here. And they had a museum going for a while, and I contributed some of my own memorabilia.
And then it was transferred over to one of the buildings which we currently now occupy.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
So anyway, there's a lot to talk about here. Anything else you want to say before we go in there and look at all your paperwork and discuss this whole property?
Well, we're going to come back here. I'd like to consciously let the viewers know that we're going to come back here after we tell the story and after we get the picture of what this is and what could be, and then come back and look at the building in a little bit a different manner. You know, 3 times in the last 50 years, this building has been vacant for 50 years. And 3 times in the last 50 years, the community has, unsuccessfully, unfortunately, tried to make an entire museum out of this building. It needs to be self-supporting. We have a plan that we've put together that will be a mix of our museum, the Regional Byways Information Center, and some leased professional space to generate income. By putting in that leased space, we pay tax on it. The city gets the benefit of the real estate tax. On those portions of the building that are not for profit, that's tax-free, but we generate income. So we pay sales tax, we pay real estate tax, and by moving into this building, the Battle of Plattsburgh Association is free to sell its buildings, putting them back on the tax rolls. That's 2 parcels of property we would subdivide and sell them individually. The timing is perfect. Laurentian air is moving in. We have a 9,800 square foot building. I sound like a real estate broker.
Don't you love it? I love it.
We have a 9,800 square foot building, which you know is the Battle of Plattsburgh 1812 Museum. Completely new infrastructure, updated. It has office space in the front. It's perfect for either warehouse or light industrial manufacturing, something to that nature. And we have 3 other buildings beside. We have an opportunity, and as I said before, a social responsibility. That I really feel that. We have an opportunity to do something that couldn't be done, unfortunately, for the last 50 years. We've got a good plan together. What we need to do is take it and move it through with the community's support.
Well, we'll have the community support. As I said at the outset, everybody will know about this. You've been on the cusp here.
The cusp.
You've been in and out of the loop of the old Stone Barracks so many times
Yes.
you make my head swim. And there are lesser people than Keith Herkelo would have given up this plan a long time ago, but here we are.
Can't give up.
At the forefront of all over again.
It's too important. This is a national treasure. It's on the National Historic Register of Places. However, in 1995, the State Historic Preservation Office deemed it National Landmark eligible. So we're still searching for that paperwork to make sure, but it is in the Air Force report from 1995, and we're moving along with that. We're sitting next to the old base cemetery, in which the first tomb of the unknown soldiers in our country is listed.
Right here.
It's right here in Plattsburgh, and no one knows that. We need to get that word out, and we need to finish the paperwork to get that listed on the National Register. And then we have significant assets which are under the ground here, and the story just goes on and on and on, and maybe now is the time to get you inside before you freeze.
I'm not freezing at all. It's almost 50 degrees outside.
Almost.
This is a blessing for me. And let's go inside and tell the whole story.
Very good.
And through the magic of television, we're on the inside.
The inside. Hello, inside.
Sound like a carnival barker on the inside. We're at a place, a venue we've been before, and this has been the home for the Battle of Plattsburgh Museum, and
it's warmer in here.
it's warmer. This whole thing started with you how many years ago?
Well, I'm one of the charter members. My signature's on the original charter, and that's from 97, I believe.
Is it really?
Yeah, and then this campus, if you want to talk about that, was established in 99 by the time we got here. And we've been growing ever since, so that's wonderful.
It's wonderful to have the campus, to have three historical organizations on the same campus. There are people who are talking a great deal about trying to make this a destination.
Absolutely.
There's that word again.
Yep.
And it's something I've talked about for almost 50 years, just about 50 years, since I first arrived here in an official capacity on the radio. And maybe, just maybe, we're getting back up on that cusp I talked about a few minutes ago.
We're close. We're close. The Destination Master Plan, for your viewers, was unveiled a couple of months ago.
And we did a nice television show with the principals, and, you know, we hope and pray, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good for the North Country. It's good for us here locally. It's good for us regionally. And nationally, the significance, as we've talked about many times, the Battle of Plattsburgh was the big enchilada in the War of 1812. And,
We know that.
We know that, and our purpose is to get that story out. You know, Baltimore and Washington were only a diversion, and those words came from Bathurst himself. And they were to create a diversion on the eastern coast in favor of the Northern Army. There were only 4,500 British sent there, and there were 10,000 here on September the 11th, 1814. Just one of the pieces of the history of this local place that we're at right now. But we're here today to talk about the Stone Barracks.
All right,
it was built around 1838.
Let me hum Where Do We Begin? Where do I begin? Okay, what do you want to show first here?
Captain Adolphus Waite. At the time this was taken, he was actually a general, but he's the gentleman that was in charge of the construction of the building in 1838. And it's not a very large picture. I apologize to your readers
That's perfectly all
about
right.
that.
We got it.
And in 1864, he was released from a Confederate POW camp, and he died in 1866, and he's buried right here in Riverside Cemetery.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now we have the
That's the ghosts in the background.
ghosts in the background.
We don't care.
Well-
This is a very informal program. If our
Very
viewers don't
informal.
know that now, they'll never know it. What's
very
next?
informal. Well, I wanted to bring to light one of the lesser-known facts that someone found in the Press Republican in the old papers, that the Clinton County Fair, the agricultural fair, was actually held. The exhibits were in the Stone Barracks in
Did
1855.
not know that until you told me.
I didn't know it until one of our researchers came up with that, and what a wonderful thing. There's a picture for you, Gordy.
Yep, we'll get it.
1857, those are 12-pound field guns. They were known as Napoleons. Well, they're sitting with their limber. The limber is the wagon, the ammo wagon that went behind them.
Yep.
And that was somewhere in the 1870s.
Oh, great stuff.
Or 1850s, excuse
Yeah.
me. It was 1850. This particular one is a shot of the barracks, and I'm going to point here.
Yeah.
This is the officers' quarters here at the end. And it shows the western wall, which is on this side over here.
gotcha.
And it's hard to pick up in the representation, but the side of the building actually used to be clapboards.
Come on.
This part of it was clapboards, and they put it up that way. You can see the ladder there. Just
Oh,
make
yeah,
it out.
yeah, I can see it.
Going up to the roof, and the thinking was that as the encampment grew, they were going to extend the building. But later on, they never did, so they took the clapboards down, they took the bricks down, and they put stone on the end of the building somewhere in the latter part of the 1880s. So if you want to flip that over, it's got my little cues on the outside.
Okay, tell me about it.
Right, the wall was brick and not stone. It was finished in the 1880s, and as I said, there's a ladder on the opposite
I saw
side
that
there,
ladder,
over
yep,
here. You can
yep.
just about pick it out in the photograph. But on this side, this little tiny thing right there, that's the fence that went to the officers' gardens, which were down
Oh,
here
come
in
on.
the front of the lot.
Is
The
it
officers had their own gardens.
Thank goodness these photographs still exist.
Absolutely. These are from local collections here. Wanted, wanted, wanted. That's a recruiting poster from 1862. And the volunteers were going to be quartered in the U.S. barracks, as it was called. And this group, as you can see here, was informally known as McComb's Plattsburgh Regiment, about 1862. And they stayed there until the 96th, was ordered to go to Virginia, and about mid-March of that year.
Calvin and I just did a wonderful program with our friend Dr. John Southwick, who's been sitting at this table here, who has a collection of 60-some-odd letters handwritten by a young man from that area, from the Northern Tier, that was in the Civil War. Wrote a letter home just about every week until he died. And heart-wrenching, emotional, because there are letters from the commanding officer, from the chaplain. Oh, my goodness. So,
Good stuff.
What do you got?
Battery G, 5th U.S. Artillery. That's them on the parade ground right beside us out here with their cannon and limber and their...
oh, my goodness.
They're waiting and posing is what they're actually doing.
You got such great stuff here.
This one is wonderful. This shows the original guardhouse. The original guardhouse as it would have been viewed from the parade ground. So we're actually looking from the parade ground west to Route 9. You can see the guardhouse there and the sentry's box, which is even more interesting right here on the side.
Isn't that
This is
wonderful?
1874, and it is just a little bit out front of our building here and over to the left. So a wonderful, wonderful thing there, the original guardhouse. I think it's the only photograph that exists.
Really? I wouldn't
believe
be a
so,
bit surprised.
of that. 1874, the officers, again, an interesting dichotomy here. The men stayed in the barracks, the enlisted men had barracks, the officers had quarters.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't understand that, but that's okay. The officers of Battery G, 5th U.S. Artillery, and their families, and they were posing on the front porch or portico, and they were getting ready to play.
They got the croquet set.
They were ready to play croquet, and the croquet set would have been set right up on the front part of the parade grounds. And croquet, as you know, was very popular then. It was a wonderful game. One of the games that ladies and men played together, which was outside of other games that they played together.
It's been a while since I played croquet. All right.
Battery G, 5th Artillery, 1874. And it shows them standing at attention out front. And for people that don't know, Ulysses Grant, he was housed here in the officers' quarters as a young lieutenant in the 1840s.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, that's a great shot.
Isn't it?
Oh.
Isn't it? They're all standing at attention.
Oh, yes.
Okay, now instead of standing at attention, they're standing at ease. They have their rifles down beside them, and it's Battery G, 5th U.S. Artillery, and again, this is 1874. They're standing at ease, waiting for the officer to give them their next directions.
You know, we have to stop just a moment and let people think that this is almost 140 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Can you imagine?
I can imagine, and that's what what I would ask your viewers to do. Imagine what can be done here in Plattsburgh if we're to continue with the Stone Barracks and preserve it and use it as one of the pieces of our destination master plan. Imagine is the correct word.
Yeah.
You know, we have, again, that social responsibility to do something significant with our own heritage. And, you know, the possibilities are endless here.
And always have been.
1874, again, Battery G, 5th Artillery. They call it gun practice in the caption on the front, but it's actually gun crew. What's the proper term for it? They're honing their skills. You know, they had to know how to load and complete all the processes under the commands of the gun captain. And they practiced all the time, and that's a military thing, which was first brought to light here in 1811. You know, McDonough's crews were were victorious with his cannons because they practiced. And they practiced, and they practiced. And unfortunately, as mighty as the British Navy was at the time, when they got here on the lake, they did not have time to have their crews practice together for any length of time. And McDonough's crews were so quick to load and so correct in their aim that the rest, as we say, is history. We're up to the 1880s now. This is the 21st Infantry Regimental Band housing. That the barracks became the housing for the infantry band just after they finished the building. And if you notice on the end here, it's now stone.
Isn't that amazing?
So the building itself has many uses over the many years. And here is the 21st Infantry
Here
Band.
they are, baby.
Lovely people. And
Just make believe you're listening to
there it is,
Stars and Stripes
1897.
Forever
Oh, I've got a real good one coming
John
up.
Philip Sousa.
You're going to love it. There's that magic name. We'll save that for later. This is 1895 through 1905 when the band was here, the 21st Infantry Band.
Hey,
and this
snow
is
on
a
the
picture
ground.
on the bottom of the exact spot where that picture was taken.
Oh my goodness.
And this is as it exists today.
Yeah.
Notice the missing pieces on the railing, which we'll talk about later.
Yes. I love before and after
Before and
photographs.
after.
Anyway.
Here's a big one.
Okay.
We're now up to the First World War, 1917 through 1923. Plattsburgh Military Training Camp was here.
Plattsburgh idea.
And you can see on the opposite side here what looks like a Browning rifle sitting on the table there, and he's opening a can of gun oil. The barracks are in the background here. There's the officers' quarters, and this is the Stone Barracks. So they're in the area which is right out front here, Route 9. So they had their tents there set up on the edge of the parade ground, which would be, at that point, a little bit closer to Route 9. You can see the buildings in the background.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
You mentioned John Philip Sousa.
Here he is.
The March King himself. He posed with the 12th Coastal Artillery Band here in Plattsburgh in 1918 on the steps of the old Stone Barracks. This is Mr. Sousa right here in the middle. John Philip Sousa here in
I
Plattsburgh.
had so many of his original recordings from the early 20th century,
You gotta love it.
and I don't think they exist anymore.
Second Company poses 1917 at the Civilian Military Training Camp. You can see the roof line in the back line here in the background, and the chimneys of the barracks and the officers' quarters. But there is the Second Company posed for their regimental photograph.
Oh, great! I love it. Yeah, I've seen quite a few of those.
There
Some
were
of the
lots
old
of them.
people have
Yep.
those, and many of them don't exist anymore. The one we had is gone. The product of the ages, I guess.
This is 1917, and it's they're going through their physical drill. This is PT, physical training, at the ROTC camp here in 1917, and you can see the officers' quarters and the barracks, the roof lines in the background. Here's the officers' quarters right there,
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
and the back end of the barracks. So that's as we're looking from Lake Forest toward the back of the barracks.
Okay.
This one is sometime around World War I, and you can see them field stripping a Browning automatic rifle. And just over the shoulders here, you can see the officers' quarters.
Which hung around here for a while, till 1964?
Yes.
Yeah, they were, isn't that, boy, look at those pictures. I think that may be the same guy in that earlier photograph.
Yes, it
that
is.
we had,
Yep, it
Who
is.
was breaking out the gun oil.
Breaking out the gun
I
oil.
recognize his bald head.
Lined up in formation during the 1923 CMTC camp. And they notice they have their bags here. They're probably just checking in. Ready to get their housing assignment, I'm assuming. It's a good assumption. What the heck, it works.
Yeah.
But they have their ditty bag. and away we go.
Well, you know, this was an active military installation for a long time. There was a lot of training here. ROTC was born right on
That's true.
this location, and the maneuvers in 1939 were monstrous. So this area has a lot of military history
Absolutely.
and all kinds of other history as well.
Sure. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force. There were some Marines here at one time. The college was here, Champlain College, over the years, and then we just found out that the agricultural fair was held.
And I
in the
did not know that until today, but you've always educated me every
Well,
time
I
we
educate
meet.
myself. Yeah.
What's next?
Well,
Oh, I love that picture.
this is 1965, roughly, when the building was the porches
We're
over the
taking off.
years were taken off.
I did not know that.
In the 50s, the building was made into quarters for NCOs and their families.
Yeah.
And I have a picture of the buildings with there.
Oh, look at this. I never saw that picture before.
They put
You've got to be kidding me.
porches on the front, and this is the aftermath when they took them down in the 60s.
That's something.
Here's a picture of the washroom in the basement.
Oh, you know, we should mention right here how sad it is. It grieves me to report that through the years, vandals
Yes.
have been in that building and did damage beyond belief. Look at this, another picture of the little. And what a shame.
And
that people.
It shows the porches on the front and the rear, the porch and the portico on the front of the building, and also on the rear that shows the quarters. Each individual quarters had their own back porch. And then in the 60s, after the building was vacated, they took them off.
Yeah, these are good shots. These are original photographs.
Yes,
you
sir,
have
they
here.
are. These are
These
from
are not copies, baby.
No, sir, these are not. These are from the files of Iggy Lacombe.
We ought to tell people who Iggy Lacombe was.
Well, Iggy Lacombe was a member of the Clinton County Historical Association way back when. This is after they tore the porches off, and I'll hold this up so that you can see all three of them. They tore the porches off the back end and actually buttoned up the building in the 60s. And then there was a move by Iggy Lacombe and the members of the Clinton County Historical Association to have the building made into a museum. And here's an inside quarters shot, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was going to be a museum.
Well, unfortunately, that didn't pan out, and there were several times over the last 50 years. The building has been vacant for 50 years,
Yeah.
and
boy,
at
it
least
shows.
3 times over the last 50 years, the community has tried to make a museum out of the building, and unfortunately, all of those things failed because it just wasn't sustainable. It needed to sustain itself.
Yep.
Well, here we have Jim Murnane. There's a name from the local past, right? And
Yep.
and Marty Fitzpatrick and Colonel Glavin, or Glavin, as his name was. He's the distinguished man with the mustache, I might add.
Isn't that Mayor Jack Terrell?
Nope, that's Martin Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick
Come on.
Construction Company. Can I
No
put that
kidding.
back on there?
Sure, I'm sorry. It looked
Yep.
like Jack Terrell to me.
Yeah. And this was Colonel Glavin or Glavin and Ruth Hecht. Remember Ruth Hecht?
Of course.
What a lovely lady.
Of course. Got to water over the proverbial
Put that one
dam.
on there if you
Yeah.
would. This one's not too interesting. Oh, this one I want to show you. Oh my God. Let's put this back on here so we don't lose track of Ruth Hecht. Very good. This one we'll leave alone. I have to show you this. Two of my favorite people. Peg Byrne and Frank Pabst.
It's Frank Pabst. Look at this.
Look at Frank Pabst
Look at-
right there. Frank, there's something missing in front of you, and that would be part of your torso.
that's
As
my-
you know Frank today, I love
Frankie
Frank.
boy, and Frank's a dear friend. The captain is a dear friend of mine for a long, long, long
And
time.
Ruth Hecht, and they were in the basement. You notice that that Frank has a light,
Yep.
and they were looking up, and that's Norm Centera. He was the airbase engineer at the time, or one of them.
Okay.
And they were looking up at the ceiling and looking at the basement. And they've done that again 2 other times, and a third just several years ago, looked at the entire building. And you know, we've gone over this and gone over this, and this is well, this is Frank and the gang again. Peg Byrne, Colonel Glavin, Ruth Hecht. Pictures of Fort Scott, but we don't need to deal with that.
There are
right
people
now.
watching this who are saying, "Oh my
God, yes.
Where did they get those pictures? It's wonderful."
All right, I'm
love
going to
it.
put this on top of there. These are some pictures of what was Fort Scott at the time.
Oh yeah.
But that's really not that relevant to what we're doing. This is the drawing of what would be the museum at the time, and it's nothing more than showing some of the buildings that were on the site at that time, and this was in the 1960s. And if you look down here, Gordy, you can probably pick it up. Is it 69? Is it? Yeah,
Yes,
it's
it
69.
is.
And it shows some of the buildings that were here at the time. And this was done to support the Stone Barracks project, which would have been a museum for the Clinton County Historical Association.
Wonderful stuff.
This is worth its weight in gold. This is the historical data from the
On
base.
Plattsburgh Barracks, prepared April 6, 1939, under the direction of Colonel T.L. Crystal, 26th Infantry.
26th Infantry.
A lot of good memories, and a lot of people now saying, "My grandfather was there, my father was there." Because that was done 2 years after I was
Down right in there
born.
for me.
Huh? Right in here?
In that folder.
Okay. You finished with the folder?
Yes, sir. And we can turn
Okay.
that right over. This was the office, the guest quarters and BOQ. We don't need that. We don't need that. Let's see what other goodies we have in
It's
here.
just wonderful to know that a lot of this original information still exists.
It does. Here's some old articles. This is 1970.
See, 1970s, 41 years ago. That's what blows my mind. 41 years
41
ago
years.
already.
The question is still relevant. Would you like to see a museum in this building? Now, the difference between then and now is, again, trying to make this building, which is 197 feet long and 3 stories, into a single museum. For the North Country, the market studies show that it can't support itself. And we need to actually make whatever goes into that building has to be self-supporting because of the acreage around it. For
But you've
instance,
said that for years.
yes, absolutely. We have. You can take a look through there and grab some of those
Well,
if you'd like. If just imagine what it takes to mow the grass. You know, there are 12
sure.
acres of property, and by the time you start at one end and you get to the other end, what's it time to do again? You know, you get a day off and you come back and you start all over again, because it takes an entire day to mow the grass. Now, in order for the museum to function as a museum, it has to have enough money to hire somebody to mow the grass and plow the snow in the winter to have access to it. So we're talking $12,000 to $15,000 just to have ground maintenance.
Sure.
And that's what we need to do, is have a self-supporting process so that if the museum moves into it and the regional visitor information center, that we have a way of supporting that. Now, the visitor information center does make money as a regional center. It gets royalties from referrals and lots of other things, dealing with bookings in hotels, and so there's a limited income from that. And by mixing the museum and the Regional Visitor Information Center with leased professional space and a small cafe, it provides an income stream that will maintain the barracks and maintain the property. And again, the Battle of Plattsburgh Association ascribes to what we call the Smithsonian concept. And that is, we don't charge to get in. We do not charge a fee to get in. Our museum is 100% free. We exist on donations and special events and sales in our gift shop. We ascribe to the principle that people should not have to pay to see their own stuff. That's literally what it is.
I love it.
And that is the Smithsonian concept.
I just want to show this because a lot of my friends will remember Roy Southworth.
Yes.
And they'll remember this from 1969.
My.
When there was a giant push on, and it was going to cost $1 per year for
$1 per
99
year.
years. $1 a year for 99 years, and we might have a local museum.
Absolutely.
And here we are with this old yellowed paper.
And we don't have enough money for that.
And we don't have enough money.
So we're working on it.
That's just wonderful stuff. But there are many good reasons why we're at a critical juncture, as they like to say. I mean, we've had these critical junctures before, but I'm not kidding when I talked about that cusp a while ago. And if we fall off the cusp this time, we will have failed, so we can't even allow for that possibility.
That's true. Now, the way the situation is, the Battle of Plattsburgh Association put together a plan in response to essentially a request from Park after they did their management study for the old Stone Barracks several years ago. Now, we looked at the management study and reviewed it. It was delivered by the programmatic agreement that the Air Force left here. They were supposed to generate this management plan and deliver it to the Clinton County Historical Association. That was done. It was generated. It was given to the Historical Association. And my good friend Roger, who was the president of the board then, asked me if I'd seen a copy of it. And I said, no, I really don't know what you're talking about. So he gave me a copy of the management plan, and I went through it. And I said, Roger, this is the same plan, essentially, the same concept as the other 3 times in the last 50 years. It won't work because it's not self-supporting. So I went to Park and I asked them through Mr. Stedman at Park, I said, I believe that the plan that you contracted for was done by a consultant. That the plan, unfortunately, is a bit short-sighted because this plan, historically, we've known that it won't support itself. And allow me, if you would, to come up with an alternative plan. And we did that, and Park liked the idea. They said, a self-supporting thing? Yes. So they allowed me the latitude to go out and gather some facts and figures. At the same time, they hired an architectural firm. And the architectural firm looked at the building under mixed-use concept, which is what I gave to Park. And the architectural firm went off on their own, and they generated figures and a concept drawing. I generated figures and a concept drawing. And in its full development, the 2 figures were $400,000 off.
Isn't that amazing?
Now, and I was more expensive.
Sure.
Okay? The entire process would have been $4.1 million. Just in concept. Now, we've scaled that back considerably, obviously, but it proved independently that the concept was good. The architectural firm looked at the dollars and cents that would have been used to renovate the barracks, and I did that also as an independent thing, and we married them together, and Park said, wow, you're onto something. Why don't you generate a business plan? And we did. We went away and generated a business plan, and Park said to us, just please don't play it out in the papers. And we respected that. Now, we didn't try to hide anything from the community. We talked about it openly. Our meetings are open to the public. It's been in our newsletters. It's been in Parks newsletters. It's on their website that we were working together to come up with a solution for the barracks. We talked about the Regional Visitor Information Center. The Lakes to Locks program has included the renovation of the barracks in their plan for the last 2 years. So there has been no secret. It just hasn't been talked about in the local community. Now, last year, if you remember, in September, our agreement with Park was that by September the 1st, we would have funding in place to do this. Unfortunately, as of last September, we are still in for a $250,000 regional byways grant from the Federal Highway Administration. They have not made the announcement yet for that. This is, by the way, March. They were supposed to have announced it in the latter part of the summer. No announcement's been made even today. The governor of the state of New York canceled the economic development program, and we relied on, over 7 years, we relied on that program to generate about $87,000 over the 7 years for us. This $87,000 is gone. We have not heard about the federal byways program. We had two of the local banks, hats off to NBT and Community Bank, after looking at our plan and taking a look at it and saying, this can be done. We would like to support you when you're ready to do that with some bridge loans, or in our case, it would have been a renewable line of credit. Hats off to both of those banks. They were willing to partner with us a couple years down the line, but we had to go back to the banks and say, we can't do this because we cannot, in all good consciousness right now, say to you that we're going to get this grant from the Federal Highway Administration. And the Economic Development Zone program was canceled. We're $87,000 down with that. So we said thank you very much, and we terminated the responsibility with Park. Now, since then,
But that was a big disappointment along the way. We're just wading and wallowing
That's
through
true.
a tremendous economic
yes,
turn
it is.
down.
Yes, it is.
And this was all part of that process.
Yes, it was. The economic downturn hit us here in the North Country, not quite as hard as it's done in several other places in the country. We're very resilient here. Well, here we are again. We're resilient. There's the good word. And we're in a situation now where the federal grant, in fact, Mr. Owen's office called me today and said the grant is still live. They haven't made any announcements yet, but as far as we're aware, your project application is still in, and Mr. Owens has looked into it. Ms. Gillibrand's staff has looked into it. Senator Schumer's staff has looked into it, and we have Betty Little working with us, and we have Janet Dupree working with us, and Don Kasperzak from the city of Plattsburgh, and the supervisor of the town. Everyone's pitching for this. The problem is we have to find the money. And we're trying to do that in a great way, but unbeknownst to anyone, unfortunately, Park marketed the property. And that being the case, a developer who just happens to be from Montreal came in and struck a deal with an option to buy the property, and that's where we sit today.
Now that was, when it did appear in the papers, and the local media, of course, focused on it with good reason, there was a lot of reaction, and people were saying, how did this happen? Why didn't you tell us you were going to do this? You could have come back and said, where were you when we needed you way back
True.
when to support this idea?
True.
But in any case, that's where we are.
That's where we are.
You've met with him.
I've met with Mr. Schneider from Montreal. He's a wonderful man, by the way, and he's a businessman, and he made a wise business decision. And I was quoted properly in the paper when I said he probably laughed all the way back to Montreal. Well, the first time I met him, I said, Mr. Schneider, with all due respect, I was quoted properly in the newspaper, and I want you to understand the context. The context was, you made a wonderful business decision, and nobody's going to be able to take that away from you. And he said to me, when I got back to Montreal, I told them to write a check right away before they changed their mind. And I said, let me paraphrase that for you. You laughed all the way back to Montreal. And he just chuckled.
Yeah.
He made a wonderful business decision on the part of his firm, and that's where we are today.
So how do you feel about that aspect of it?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, after the initial reaction, and people reacted emotionally.
Oh, they
and
sure did.
We can understand that, and vehemently. But at this point, when the group of them informally called the Friends of the Old Stone Barracks, they came to me and said, you've been through the process. You have the contacts. You know what's going on. You know the story. Can you join us in this effort? And the answer was kind of switched around because we are a 501c3
Sure.
corporation.
Oh, yeah.
We have the application that's sitting out there for the Regional Information Center, which is still active. So I said to that particular group, why don't you become a committee of the Battle of Plattsburgh Association, and together the Battle of Plattsburgh Association and Friends will move forward in an effort to deal with the situation. Now, it may come to pass that Mr. Schneider turns out to be a landlord, and we can work out some kind of an arrangement for a long-term lease, which he is amenable to.
Really?
Absolutely.
I did not know that.
Absolutely. He told me last week that he would come up with lease terms if we were into that kind of a discussion for however long it took the lease term to be most advantageous for grant funding. So he's willing.
$1 a year for 99 years?
Well, he wants it a little bit more than that,
Yeah.
but we don't know what it's going to be yet,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to convince Mr. Schneider in speaking with him to do one thing or another. My attempt is to bring everyone to the table with all of the information that is available and let people make up their own minds here. And obviously I can talk about what ifs. I can generate for people the scene that they might see down the road. It could be one of many things. It could be an outright lease. It could be a planned unit development under the city's zoning board and planning board, in which the property was able to be turned over to a not-for-profit organization, with Mr. Schneider holding an interest. He could wind up, first of all, the community was presented with a concept drawing. It's by no means reality, and it has to go through all of the classic steps, and that is it has to be presented to the planning board, it has to be presented to the zoning board, it has to go before the State Historic Preservation Office, and the initial architectural concept drawing showed maximum coverage, and it's never going to happen. We all know that. So the question is, what can be done? And Mr. Schneider is going to have to make a business decision, and that decision is, can he put anything on the property? And if he does, what kind of income is it going to generate? And he's in business, we know that. So what we're trying to do is provide him with as much information as he can get, and all of the other entities which we have here, State Historic Parks Office, the local zoning and planning board, and the community itself, to see what we have here and let everyone come to the table and say this is a good idea or it's a bad idea, but not emotionally, based on the information and the data which we have. That's the important part.
Isn't it nice to have now some intelligent input instead of just a sheer...
From me?
Well, you and I have been
But I
friends for a
digress.
very long time, and I know how much midnight oil you spend on this.
Gordy, it's
I
just...
know about your applications and your plans and your
That's-
ventures with the banks and all of those things, because you and I have confidence in each other, and we've talked about these things for a long time, and you know how I feel.
Many of those 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock things in the middle of the night.
Absolutely. And do you feel confident at this point in time?
I do. And I do, first of all, because what we've done in the last 2 weeks is put everyone on the same page. We've provided data to everyone. The real estate people have it, Park has it, Mr. Schneider has it, the mayor of the city of Plattsburgh has it. I haven't talked to Bernie from the town yet about the information. The property is actually in the city, but we sought his help as part of the community also, and I wanted to get with him and apprise him. But Jerry, their historian, I've kept him apprised of the situation along the way. What we've done in the last couple of weeks is stopped the emotional outcry and actually gotten down to logically looking at the situation, and then taking the logical approach, but then transferring it over into this unending call that we have, which is a social responsibility to do something right by the barracks. And it's a national treasure. And as we learned in looking at the documents, in 1993, the State Historic Preservation Office deemed the barracks to be a National Landmark eligible site.
Absolutely.
Not only on the National Register, but on the National Landmark eligibility. They put forth a report that had that in it. But then there are other things that color this. And through the research, we've been able to look at what's happened underground and what we have under our feet right here. And that's going to affect the use of the property. It's going to affect what could be ostensibly built on the property, and it may yield significant archaeological assets for the museums here locally in the state.
Why was that never done before?
I can't answer
what,
that, Gordy.
What kind of a light went on in your brain to get you into that in the first place?
Well, as you know, Gordy, I don't shoot from the hip. Although if I did, I'd probably shoot myself in the foot, right?
Me too.
But when I go into something, I like to look at all of the information. And, you know, my mentor was the good doctor, and he said to me, let the information speak for itself. Let the documents speak for themselves. You know, Alan Everest was the mentor, and he said, if you're researching something, take your opinions out of it. Take your emotions out of it. Go back to the original documents and let the documents speak for themselves. That was the phrase that he left me with when I walked out of his lovely little yellow house on South Catherine Street. Let the documents speak for themselves. Why should it be any different in this situation? I went back to the original documents and I did the research and found the archaeological surveys that were done, and I put all the information in one spot. Was Mr. Schneider aware that there were underground archaeological assets? No. You know, was Park aware that there were archaeological assets under the ground? I don't believe so. I don't think they actually did the homework at this point. And, you know, maybe Park did. I tend to think that's not the case. I think that they just were not aware of it. Certainly when we went through the exercise back last year, we knew that there were archaeological surveys. We had one done in 2002. So we knew that there were pieces under the ground here, but it suddenly became apparent to me in looking at the property and the way it was marketed that other people were not aware of what we were aware of. So here is the attempt to set the record straight, put all the data on the table, let the marketing firm know it, let Park know it, let the community know it, let Mr. Schneider know it, and let us as potential citizens using the property here, what we have at stake, what's in front of us.
Let's just talk about what you think is the responsibility of the average John Q. citizen who is watching this program. How can we engender an enthusiasm for each person to take a tiny bit of ownership of this whole situation, to talk to their friends about it on all those social sites that are so much in the news these days, to tell their friends in Oshkosh to come here on vacation and to, you know, chat on the kitchen table rather than to gripe and moan, seems to be the common exercise for people to complain about things. What positive can these individuals do?
Well, a couple of things, Gordy. First of all is get the truth, you know, get the facts, and
that's what we're
talk
here
to
for.
us.
Yes,
talk to us, and that's what we need. There's a website. It's called the Friends of the Old Stone Barracks, and it's on the internet. You can get to it. There's a Weebly site which tells the story of what we're trying to do here. The Battle of Plattsburgh organization is on the site. It's www.battleofplattsburgh.org. Save the Old Stone Barracks is the Facebook page. Go to that. Look at the information that's there. You'll see some of these photographs there. You'll see information relating to the Stone Barracks itself and its history. And I think one of the most important things that can happen is find out for yourself what's going on and talk to us. What we need is support from the local community. And the local leaders are with this situation. They are aware of it. But what we need to do is let the people know that they should contact their local representatives and let them know that they support it also. There's nothing like community spirit getting behind something, just as they tried in 1965. Unfortunately, the circumstances weren't there, and possibly the market wasn't there, and possibly the plan was a little bit behind where it should have been. Now the plan is good. The money is another subject, and prices have gone up in the last year, so we're 15 or 20% more expensive today than we were last year. The process that we're trying to look at, Gordy, is a win-win for the community. If we move our museum, which is the building that we're in right now, into the Stone Barracks, into the 1/3 of the building, then this building is vacated. And this building can be sold and the money used for more seed money to go into the barracks, further renovating the space. And then this building gets sold and gets put on the tax rolls. So we have a piece of property that gets returned to the city of Plattsburgh's tax rolls. We have 3 buildings across the road here. Once those are vacated, those buildings and its property can be sold. They're put back on the tax rolls. So we have 2 parcels that would be put back on the tax roll. And then once we're inside the building, all of the space, as we alluded to before, that is used to generate income, we pay tax on that, real estate tax. So there's tax generated by sales, and the sales tax, for instance, in the shop here and in the cafe, that sales tax, although there's no tax on food, is there? We'll think about that. But the least professional space, we would pay tax on that property. It's a good thing for the city of Plattsburgh. It's a win for the local economy here because we are a not-for-profit that is paying tax. How can you not pay attention to that? What we have is a situation where people complain about not-for-profits not paying taxes. I am giving them an opportunity to say that's not true. Here's a not-for-profit that wants to pay tax. We welcome the opportunity. We happen to be a business. We just happen to be a museum. That's the way we do things.
It's very important to reiterate. By the way, we're talking with Keith Herculoe about the old Stone Barracks. We want people who are watching this program to discuss it at their supper tables.
Please do.
And at their breakfast tables, to talk to their friends who don't live in this area about it. We want to reiterate that this is the oldest extant building on this property, dating to 1838. And we don't want it to molder over there any longer.
No, it's and some people have said to me, why don't we just manage to get a hold of it and just let it sit until we figure out what's going to happen with it? Well, my answer to that is it's been sitting for 50 years. Yeah. And as we'll see shortly, although the front of the building or the interior of the building is in pretty reasonable shape. It has a new slate roof in 1994. The windows were rehabbed in 1995 before the Air Force left. But the porch and the portico have been sitting since the Air Force left in 1995. Today is 2011. So do the math. That's 16 years. And in 16 years, we have the soffit and the porch and the portico, the railings, the balusters are missing. The porch has soft spots in it, which means rotten wood. And the exterior of the building has to be brought back by the State Historic Preservation Office and Air Force covenants in the deeds, has to be brought back to the Department of the Interior Standards, which means you just can't go to Lowe's and purchase a piece of wood and stick it in there. It has to be the same kind of wood. It has to be manufactured in the same way, painted with the architectural colors as they are today. Certain kinds of paint can be used, certain kinds of materials can be used, and others can't. So it's very expensive. We need $50,000 just on the porch and the portico for materials, Gordy. Just for materials. So you double that for the labor. We're talking $100,000 for the porch and the portico alone. And you'll see when we take a walk over there why it's important for the local community to get involved with this, because the place on the exterior is falling apart. Now, the inside's in very good shape, and I wish we could take a walk in there, but unfortunately there's nobody left at park to get the key from. So
that's a good point.
We'll get in there at some time in the future. Yes, and take a look. The inside was stripped. The place has been remediated. It's ready to go. In terms of the state parlance or construction terms, it's shovel ready. It's ready for us to go in and start putting in things as opposed to taking them out. There's not much demolition work to do at all. So what we're talking about is a project that at this point is about $1.6 million. We can, if we get the grants that we're looking at and through the sale of the properties that we have here, we can put our hands on about 500,000 of that, which is wonderful, but we still need 1.1 million. So what we've devised is a plan that goes over 7 years, and it slowly and incrementally brings us to the point where we occupy more and more, and we generate income halfway through. And we continue to generate more and more and more income as we get through the latter part. And finally, at the end, we're totally self-supporting, Gordy. A museum, a regional information center, and the least professional space and cafe. All the grass is mowed. We welcome our visitors to the area. We send them to the local museums and the motels. We're part of the regional byways program. Imagine, you said it before, imagine what can happen here.
Imagination is a wonderful thing, and you've always had a vivid imagination. So the last chapter of this program will be outside. We'll talk more about the archaeology, a lot about the archaeology.
Absolutely.
A lot of it I only guessed at, having heard rumors down through the years. We'll pinpoint that because you've discovered a great deal. We'll look at the property and let people know just exactly what we're talking about.
Very good.
We're talking with Keith Herculow about the old Stone Barracks, and we're back on the scene. What are we looking at?
We're at the scene of the crime. You know, look at what's in front of us here, Gordy. You know, there are some that say, and appropriately so, if they look at it from Route 9, what a beautiful building. Well, now we're up close. And look at what's happened to the building in 15 years, in 16 years. What you're looking at here is the porch and the portico. And just look at the railings. You know, there are 480 of those lovely things in there. And the balusters, they go between the railing and the bottom railing, and there are 97 of them that are missing. And the ones that are there are significantly deteriorated. They need a lot of help. You can see right here in front of us, and if you don't mind, I'll take a walk in front of the camera. You know, we're looking at rotted wood here, Gordy. You know, listen to that.
Oh yeah.
That's total rot, Gordy.
Nothing left. That has to be replaced.
Completely replaced, all of it. And the deck is in the same shape. It's dry, it's punky wood. You can take your fingernail and go right through the surface of it. Now, I mean, it's not termite ridden, but it's dry rotted. There's nothing left of it. So it needs to be fixed. This is completely bone dry and it's falling apart. So what we have here in front of us is a wonderful, wonderful national landmark eligible site that is falling apart on the outside. Granted, some people say to me, well, the walls are 16 inches thick. We know that, but you have to go around and fix all the grouting in those things. Of course you know. The rain and the wind, they force themselves into every minute little crack that happens, and in the wintertime it expands because it turns to ice and it spalls. That's the wonderful term, and it actually forces the mortar out from between the bricks, the blocks. And you can see evidence of that right here. I mean, that's open. That's
I
got to
see,
be
right
replaced.
behind me over this shoulder, sure.
Absolutely. And if you scan up the wall, this was the wall that was done in the 1880s, if you
I'm
remember.
glad we saw those pictures, yeah.
Used to be clapboards, and then in the 1880s they figured out, well, we're not going to expand this anymore, so let's put the blocks in and make it the end of the building officially. And that's what happened. But all this pointing has to be done at some time in the future. A building does not sit by itself forever. You know, it's subject to just as the same kinds of things that you and I are subject to, and it's called time.
So when the funds become available, this will be first?
Yes, the porch and the portico have to be addressed immediately because it's falling apart. Now, we're going to take a walk around the entire building if you'd like. Let
Sure.
your viewers see the building right up front, and they can come here anytime. The building the grounds are open. They can drive here, see for themselves, you know, what's happening with this. I'd caution that if you walk on the porch, which is what we might do, that there are places where you don't want to walk.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
We're talking about.
All right, we're just looking up and down and around. You tell us what we should be looking at.
Well, you should be looking at the condition of the porch and the portico up on top. You know, notice down here, the trim, because of the water damage rolling off the porch, that trim is all rotted. And if you look at the porch itself, Gordy, look at the porch, it has a dip in it.
Yeah, sure does.
And the water puddles there. And the standing water turns to rot. And that's what we have here. That's mold up there. And that's falling apart. And the concrete is beginning to show spalling and cracking. And if you look up here, as we follow down, look at the front facade here of the portico up there. You know, it's completely missing. It's gone. It's fallen apart and fallen off, and someone trucked it away. You know, we don't know where it went.
So most of the wood has to be replaced?
Well, I don't know about most, but according to the Department of the Interior standards, you just can't put a piece of wood in there. It has to be the same kind of wood, and it has to be done to the Department of the Interior specifications. Now, if you look up here on the portico and move to the right, you see the railing there. It's completely fallen apart. That end piece over there is completely rotted. If you were to go up there and lean against that, which I don't think you want to do,
Not a good idea.
the landing would be startling because of the concrete on the bottom. So moving down, you can see evidence of where, even though the no trespassing sign, you can see they tried to pull the no trespassing sign off.
Well, tragically, we talked about vandalism, and I hate to point the finger, but sadly, there have been a lot of misinformation about this building being haunted, and on certain websites, and people come in here and do occult things, and they've even started fires down in the basement and done horrible things.
Horrible.
And that's what just grieves me tremendously.
And the reason that happened is because the building is unoccupied,
It's not
Gordy.
here.
Yeah,
Nobody
it's
here.
unoccupied. Now look at the bottom of the pillars, right in the middle, and you can see that the weight of the pillars is starting to push. Follow the line of the deck across, and it's starting to push into the deck, forcing the end of the deck up here in the middle. And you can see that all the way along here. The porch itself is in drastic need of repair.
And that'll be, it's not just any Joe that can come, any weekend carpenter that can come in and do that.
That's correct. The same thing up here, where the railing is missing here. Look at the floor line.
Oh, I can see it.
Absolutely. That's all rotting. It's swollen. It's pulled up. The fasteners have rotted. You know, they're the nails, and they've gotten to the point where they don't even hold anymore. In many of them, because they're not treated. By treated, I mean the surface wasn't painted. Therefore, the fasteners rusted, and when the fasteners rust, the boards become loose and they start to migrate, and that's what we're seeing right in front of us here. You got a plaque on it? This is a Boy Scout marker. Oh, you're talking about the one in there. That is the National Register plaque, if you can get in there. I'd be careful, though.
Yeah. Oh, that's a national. Has that
Yes.
been there for a long time?
Yes, that was there since 1971 when the barracks was deemed National Historic Register, and that's when the plaque was put up. And the Clinton County Historical Association, that organization, one of the three on this campus, one of the three museums, they were responsible for leading that charge to get the barracks on the National Historic Register. Now, once again, the Air Force in 1993, working with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, they deemed the property to be national landmark eligible. So we're standing in front of what could be a national landmark next to the bay, which is Cumberland Bay, a national landmark site. And again, we have a social responsibility to make sure that this building is treated the way it should be treated.
And as we walk, let's talk a little bit about that archaeology, underground archaeology you were talking about.
Very good. Now we'll get to that in a total subject later on, but the space right in front of us here, if you remember from the pictures, looking toward the lake, there was another building right here.
Right.
And that was the officers' quarters. Now, that was torn down in 1964. But the Air Force, in reviewing the property as they were leaving Plattsburgh, they performed something known as a cultural survey. And because they looked at this area, they looked at the structure that was here before, and they published a report in 1995. And they said that the underground portion of what was the officers' quarters contained significant archaeological information and artifacts. So they deemed this property to be architecturally sensitive, or archaeologically sensitive, excuse me. And their recommendation in the report from the Air Force 1995 is that nothing should be built on this location right here until a complete archaeological survey and removal of any underground artifacts is accomplished. Now, this is what archaeologists do. If you note from the Smithsonian movies, they have the little paintbrushes and they have the little tiny trowels, and they go through and they go layer by layer by layer and record and bag and catalog everything. And then they take photographs and they make drawings, and it takes a long, long time. But they also deemed this underground site as a possible National Register site location all by itself.
All by itself.
All by itself.
With good reason, I think.
With good reason, yes. Now, as we're standing here, we showed the photograph before, and there were gardens over here, if you remember, right? And then over in the corner, right about where the tree is there, beyond the telephone pole, that's where the base schoolhouse was. It's a little tiny schoolhouse, and it was right about in that location. Well, now we're going to turn around and look at the building from the east side, looking west. And if you look up, you can see that the end of the building doesn't look too bad. Most of the damage is on the other side. We don't get too many eastern winds here, which is nice, but it does happen a lot. And you can see that some work has been done on this. They put vents in years ago to aerate underneath the porches. In my opinion, I'm not an engineer, but in my opinion, that's not enough square footage to aerate that entire place in there.
Would you guess that by looking at it?
we need to talk about that in the future. And there are things that we need some engineering help with, we need some architectural help with, and we're going to reach out to the community and say, please, if you have these kinds of skills, make yourself known to us, because we need some help. And the help that we need is engineers to come in and look at the building and say, whoa, structurally, we know it's in good shape. It's been reviewed in the last couple of years. But again, the Air Force moved out 16 years ago, and this has been sitting for 16 years, and we really need to make sure that it's looked at in a scale that would allow us to move forward with a degree of certainty, so that we know we're not throwing good money after bad, to use that biblical term.
There's a lot of square feet inside this building.
Yes, sir. 3,840 square feet per floor. But who's counting?
Yeah, per floor.
Per floor. And if you look at that, Gordy, and you say to yourself, well, what does it cost to renovate? In a building this shape, the engineering estimates that I'm looking at are anywhere from $180 a square foot in the basement area to $200 a square foot on the main floor. And you do the math and it adds up pretty quickly. And then we need exterior work done. For instance, it's going to take at least $40,000 to bring power to this building. Another $10,000 to redo the access to the sewer. We're told that the sewer line and water line are in pretty good shape.
No kidding.
The water department of the city of Plattsburgh has taken a pretty good look at that. Notice the foundation damage here.
Sure.
That's got to be fixed by a stonemason. That's not something that we can just throw pieces at. And if you notice going down to all this, right at the ground level, you can see that there are holes in that. That's all got to be fixed. The access to the building for handicapped access would have to be done through this doorway here. It would have to be excavated somewhat. The important part is that we wouldn't have to change any of the exterior of the buildings. But there's 92 windows, Gordy.
Yes, there are.
20 doors.
Yeah.
You do the math and you add that all up and say to yourself, who is going to fix all that? Number one, how about storm windows? There aren't any.
Yeah.
All right, $30,000 worth of storm windows that can put on from the inside that will meet the Department of the Interior standards for preservation. We can do that on the inside of the barracks, but that's $30,000.
Yeah.
We add that all up and it says we need some help. And that's why we're here today talking about it. This would become the handicapped access entrance. We would have to redo this. And generate the appropriate slope, so it would change what we have out here. We'd have to put some parking in, obviously. We need access for a bus. Eventually that would be off Route 9, coming down this way. And Route 9 is part of the byways corridor. You can look at the building here and see that people have tried to get in again, and it's been covered by a piece of wood. We have damage to the manhole cover here. That's got to be completely reseated and redone.
All those things do add up.
They add up incrementally. And the longer you let it wait, the more expensive it is. And now we're on the western side of the building, Gordy, and contrast this bottom of the building with the other bottom of the building. Notice the damage here on this end. And this is weather damage, and it's because the water got into it and it's torn the foundation apart because of the ice. And that's all got to be fixed before anything happens. The cover is off the doorway upstairs there. That's allowing water to get in.
Of course, up here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I see a window already stoned over there.
Yep, that was done several years ago.
Huh.
There are a couple.
Best case scenario, Keith Herkelo, if funding became available soon, when could you get started on this?
Immediately. And the reason for immediately is the building is shovel ready, if you remember. The inside has been completely gutted. That was done in the 80s sometime. Everything has been torn out. All the wall coverings are gone. It's right back to the bare wood, meaning the original wood for the interior. So all those divisions that were put inside for the quarters back in the 1950s, that's exactly what you have. You can look from one end to the other of this building, look right through all the wood.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Wow.
And, it's in ready shape. It would need maybe 30 days worth of demo work, meaning demolition work, to go inside and tear out the remainder of the pieces that need to be pulled out. And then you deal with it. You start moving in right away. You fix the porch and the portico. This is the perfect time for it because we're moving into the summertime. It would be nice if we could take this building and have it in shape by 2012, the end, 2013, get this campus ready for the Battle of Plattsburgh, for the War of 1812, the War of 1812,
wow.
bicentennial. And by 2014, we hope to have thousands upon thousands of people visiting here.
Of course.
What an incredible thing to draw them to. What an incredible resource to have as part of the Federal Byways program. And here's something that most people don't know. The Federal Byways program has just partnered with the Smithsonian as far as marketing and advertising. So the Lakes to Locks program here in New York State now carries the National Geographic logo on it. They have partnered with National Geographic for promotion of the Federal Byways program here in New York, again, which is that corridor between Manhattan and New York. The closest regional Montreal, excuse me. The closest regional byways center is Lake George. There is nothing between Lake George on Route 9 and the border. This would be the Regional Information Center. Lakes to Locks program has been trying for at least 10 years, and I've been talking for at least 10 years
More than
about getting a Regional Information Center here in Plattsburgh. So now we're at the other end of the building, and this is where we started. Now I'm going to turn right around, and if you focus right over just beyond that ugly looking van of mine, that's where the signal gun emplacement was. That's an underground asset. And now let's take a walk over there. Let me bring out the map and show people what's underground here.
All right. All right, we're on the hood of the car. What do we got?
We
here?
are on the hood of the car, and we are oriented just as we are looking today.
I got it.
Okay. Over here is the roundabout. I call it the goofy roundabout, but that is the roundabout, the traffic calming circle.
Yeah.
And this is Route 9, which is right in front of us. And you can see the entrance to the Glens Falls Bank is right here.
Sure thing.
This is the campus, looking from Route 9 all the way through to the lake, which is over here. We are standing right here. Look at this little dot.
Yep.
See it? It's right off the end of the barracks. So it's right in front of us, this little depression here. In 2002, the archaeologists came here at our request, the Battle of Plattsburgh Association, and looked at the property that had not been surveyed by the Air Force. And they went over this ground with a magnetometer and ground penetrating radar, and they said, whoa, there's something right there. And what it is the remains of a signal gun emplacement. Back when the parade grounds was here for reveille and to call the men to come out for formation, they would fire the signal gun. The remains of that are underground right here. Here's the recommendation of the archaeologist. The archaeologist says nothing should be excavated in this particular site until a full archaeological survey is done and any artifacts removed. That's their statement.
That pleases me.
2002.
Pleases me a great deal.
Following over to the right, which is over here, just about where that tree is, right in the middle of the front acres here, that large yellow square that you see right there, the archaeologists detected 2 buildings there. And those 2 buildings were cavalry stables. Same statement. There's a significant layer of archaeologically interesting material underneath the ground. Nothing should be excavated in that area until a full archaeological survey is done and all the artifacts removed, etc., etc. Now that's on the lot which is on the other side, right in front of us here, toward Route 9. The large red circle, right about over in there, just to this side of the Glens Falls building, if you see where the Glens Falls building is, that large red circle there, which is right where that depression is, right there in the middle over there, that was a cistern. Cistern collected water for the support of the campus here, for the barracks. Well, that cistern, the archaeologists looked at it, they came up with some artifacts from underneath the ground there, and they said the same recommendation. Nothing should be excavated in that area until a full archaeological survey is done and all the artifacts removed. Now, we looked at this area down here, and this is at the other end of the barracks, and that's where the Air Force in 1995 looked at that area and said there are significant assets, as we talked about before. This could be a National Register site by itself, even though it's underground. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 archaeologically sensitive areas on this particular lot right here in front of us.
Wow.
To the left of us, we have the small building that's labeled 23. That is from 1836. That's been here that long. It is National Register.
It's older than the barracks?
Older than the barracks.
I did not know
was
that.
the armory. That's where they stored all their powder. And that particular building is on the National Register. The building that's in front of us here is significantly newer, and if you look
Number
at the way
21, yeah.
Yes, if you look at that particular building, that's got blast ports in it.
Oh,
Look
yeah.
at see the little things on the outside, and
Sure.
notice the door. You know, the door is very thick steel. That was the armory from the 1940s. You know, 1930s, 1940s. Now, we could use it for something in the future, but it's not terribly architecturally significant. Let's put it that way. The small building, however, is.
Of course,
that's
because
the
of its
original,
age.
original powder magazine.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we're sitting on an area, Gordy, where we have all of these underground assets. They need to be dealt with, and this particular area that we're sitting on right now has to be reused in an adaptive and sensitive way by the community. Now, our plan for the barracks itself would be to move the Battle of Plattsburgh Association into the barracks on this side. This is the front view here in the middle.
Right.
The Battle of Plattsburgh Association would occupy this area on the first floor. This is the first floor plan. We would occupy about 1/3 of the space. The middle portion of the lobby the lobby itself would be the Visitor Information Center, the
Perfect.
Regional Byways Center, and then we would start to add suites on the bottom floor, one of which would be a cafe. And moving up to the second floor, there would be 3 office suites on the top floor, plus the 2 on the bottom, which is 5, plus the cafe is 6. This generates income.
Yes.
This is taxable.
Great.
It goes on the tax rolls. On the top floor would be a center, and that center is common area. For people that reside in these offices during the day, if they want to entertain their clients at night, there's a common area that comes out on this beautiful portico here, overlooking Lake Champlain. Imagine wine and cheese with your clients on the second floor.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of the best pieces of property in all of Clinton County, possibly on the entire lake. And it's right under our nose. We have a common area here, a small kitchenette. We have classroom and theater space, just like we have in our existing building. But the difference is it's available to the clients in the building also. So they can have a small meeting room, they can use the kitchenette, they have a common area. That's the plan for the building. The bottom would be storage, most of the building. Handicapped entrance on the back end of the building. The plan is for a sensitive, adaptive reuse of the building that winds up and yields a self-supporting museum and an income center and pays tax. What better situation can we have? Imagine what can happen here. You used the word before. Imagine. Socially responsible reuse.
Isn't that wonderful? You know, you've convinced me, but you convinced me many years ago. So you do have a rather overweight accomplice here. So once again, let me reiterate. It's important for everybody watching this program to think about it, to talk about it, to kibitz about it, to palaver about it, to tell their friends across the country about it. And if people watching this program have either some influence or some way that they can make a contribution that we don't even know about yet, can they contact you?
Absolutely. The Battle of Plattsburgh Association and the Friends of the Old Stone Barracks will be a standing committee of us from now on until we see this project through and help preserve the Old Stone Barracks. You know, we hope to see these all over the community.
This is a hue and cry that we've started before we came here today, but we hope to. We hope we can perpetrate it and propagate it.
Propagate is better.
And spread it all over the country.
Has to be.
It's not good enough to take your friends from out of town this summer and to drive by and say, look at that nice old building. Get it into your head, get it into your heart and soul. And with everybody working together, with you at the helm, Keith Hercolo, this will come to fruition, and hopefully well within our lifetime.
I sure hope so, Gordy. You know, one of the hallmarks of what we're trying to do here is heritage, right? And this is our community's heritage. And you used the word before, imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine what can happen here. If we turn and look over here, part of the Destination Master Plan meeting that we had just this morning was the thought of taking and building a blockhouse on that far right-hand side of the property, away from any archaeologically sensitive pieces, and have that to become an interactive museum piece by itself. Have people join in building. And then moving down, since there were cavalry stables there, why not put a small stable in there with a blacksmith shop, and also give us space to store the rooster, which is our 37-foot bateau, out of sight, out of mind. It's 40 feet long, the trailer is, so we wind up covering the side of the lot over there so that we don't see the modern buildings which are behind us here, the garages. From Route 9 you would be able to see the majesty that is before you, this national landmark eligible site, and the start of a living history model for the North Country.
These are dreams and not pies in the sky. So please get involved, everyone. Thank you very much, Keith Hercolo, for your long-term friendship, for your tremendous insight, a great study. I can't wait to see this whole plan come to fruition, and it will get that way if we have anything to say about it. Thanks to our viewers for your viewing habits and watching this program. Thanks for your comments and suggestions. Don't forget to send money to Calvin Castine at Hometown Cable on the Ridge Road in Champlain. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little